Chapter 4. Oriel. If he hadn't gone to Fortune Deer Street and Peach Leaf Alley, perhaps Chen Ping'an would have never realized just how dark and confined Clay Vase Alley was. However, not only was he not disheartened by his own living condition, he felt a sense of reassurance. He smiled as he extended both hands outward, and his wingspan was just enough so that he was able to touch the earthen walls on either side of him. He recalled that around 3 to 4 years ago, he was only able to touch those walls with the tips of his fingers. After returning to his home, he discovered that the gate of the courtyard was wide open. Thinking that he had just been robbed by a thief, Chen Ping'an hurriedly rushed inside, only to find a tall and broad young man sitting on the doorstep. He was leaning back against the locked door, yawning with a bored expression, and he immediately jumped to his feet at the sight of Chen Ping'an, as if his bottom had just been scorched. He then rushed over to Chen Ping'an and grabbed tightly onto his arm before dragging him forcefully toward the room, as he hissed in a low voice, "Open the door. I have something important to tell you." Chen Ping'an was unable to struggle free and could only allow himself to be dragged to the door. The young man was 2 years older than Chen Ping'an and more physically developed, and after the door was opened, he quickly threw Chen Ping'an aside before sneaking his way onto Chen Ping'an's plank bed, then pressed his ear tightly against the wall to eavesdrop on the neighbors. "What are you doing, Liu Xianyang?" Chen Ping'an asked with a curious expression. Liu Xianyang paid no heed to him, and after about 7 or 8 minutes, Liu Xianyang returned to normal before sitting down on the edge of the plank bed with a peculiar mixture of relief and disappointment on his face. Only now did he notice that Chen Ping'an was doing something rather strange. He was squatted down inside the doorway with his body leaning forward, using a candle to burn a piece of yellow paper. Only around a thumb's length of the candle remained, and all of the ashes of the burned piece of paper fell outside of the doorway. It seemed that Chen Ping'an was also chanting something, but Liu Xianyang was too far away to hear what he was saying. Liu Xianyang was Old Man Yao's best disciple. As for Chen Ping'an, Old Man Yao had never truly accepted him as a disciple due to his mediocre aptitude for the craft. According to local traditions, no master and disciple relationship could be established unless the disciple offered a cup of tea to the master in a formal ceremony, and the master accepted and drank the cup of tea. Chen Ping'an and Liu Xianyang weren't neighbors. In fact, their ancestral homes were quite far away from one another's. The reason why Liu Xianyang had recommended Chen Ping'an to Old Man Yao stemmed from their past history. Liu Xianyang was once a renowned delinquent in the town. Prior to the passing of his grandfather, there was at least an adult in the household to keep him in check. But after his grandfather passed away due to illness, Liu Xianyang quickly became an absolute nightmare for his neighbors. At the time, he was only 12 or 13 years old, but he was already no less physically developed than a young man. And one time, he somehow made enemies out of a group of boys from the Liu family. As a result, he was ganged up on in Clay Vase Alley and was handed a vicious beating. His assailants were all young boys who didn't think about the consequences of their actions, and Liu Xianyang was quickly beaten to the point where he was throwing up blood. All of the dozen or so clans that resided in Clay Vase Alley were bottom-class potters who made a living by working at small dragon kilns, and they didn't dare to intervene. At the time, not only was Song Jixin not frightened by this horrific scene, he was watching with glee as he squatted on top of the wall, reveling in the chaos of the situation. In the end, the only one who did anything was an emaciated child, who snuck out of his yard and rushed to the entrance of the alley, where he screamed with all his might, "Help! Someone's about to die here." Only after hearing the word die did the boys from the Liu family receive a rude awakening. At that point, Liu Xianyang's entire body was covered in blood, and he was on the brink of death. The boys from the Liu family finally felt a sense of fear at what they had done upon seeing this, and after exchanging a few glances with one another, they quickly fled down the other end of Clay Vase Alley. However, after that incident, not only was Liu Xianyang not grateful to the child that saved his life, he regularly came over to bully the child instead. The child was an orphan, and he was very stubborn, refusing to cry no matter how much he was bullied, something that only served to further infuriate Liu Xianyang. One year, Liu Xianyang could tell that the little orphan most likely wasn't going to be able to make it through the winter, and he was finally stung by his conscience. Having already become a disciple of Old Man Yao's at the time, he took the young boy to the dragon kiln that was situated beside Treasure Creek. They headed west out of the town, traveling over dozens of kilometers of rugged mountain terrain under heavy snowfall. To this day, Liu Xianyang still couldn't understand how the emaciated young boy, with a pair of legs as thin as baby bamboo shoots, had managed to walk all the way to the dragon kiln. Even though Old Man Yao ultimately took Chen Ping'an in, the disparity in his treatment of the two boys was night and day. As his best disciple, Liu Xianyang wasn't spared from his beatings and insults, but even a blind man could sense the good intentions behind Old Man Yao's words and actions. For example, there was one time when he went a little too far, inflicting a bleeding gash onto Liu Xianyang's forehead. As a tough young boy, Liu Xianyang didn't think much of this, but Old Man Yao was feeling very remorseful over his actions. However, he had always kept up a stern and authoritative facade in front of his disciples, so he couldn't bring himself to apologize or inquire about his condition. In the end, he paced back and forth in his own room for almost an entire night, and he was still concerned about Liu Xianyang. Finally, he had no choice but to call over Chen Ping'an to deliver a bottle of ointment to Liu Xianyang. Over the years, Chen Ping'an had always been very envious of Liu Xianyang. He didn't envy Liu Xianyang for his remarkable aptitude, strength, and charisma. Instead, he envied Liu Xianyang's fearlessness. No matter where he went, Liu Xianyang was never fazed by anything, nor did he ever feel like living alone was a bad thing. Wherever he went, he was always able to quickly make friends with whoever he met, getting on such friendly terms with them that they referred to one another as brothers and would drink and play drinking games together. Due to his grandfather's ill health, Liu Xianyang was forced to become self-dependent from a very young age, making him a leader of sorts among the children in the area. He was skilled at everything, whether it be catching snakes, fishing, procuring eggs from birds' nests, making bows, fishing rods, slingshots, bird cages. It seemed like there was nothing that he couldn't do. In particular, he was the undisputed king of the town when it came to catching catfish and fishing for eels in the channels of water running through plots of farmland. Back when Liu Xianyang dropped out of the private school, the teacher there, Mr. Xu, had paid a visit to Liu Xianyang's grandfather on his sickbed, offering to provide Liu Xianyang an education free of charge. However, Liu Xianyang refused to go back no matter what, telling the teacher that all he wanted to do was earn money, and that he had no interest in an education. Mr. Xu then offered Liu Xianyang a paid job as a scholarly attendant, but Liu Xianyang turned down that offer as well. As it turned out, Liu Xianyang was doing quite well for himself. Even though Old Man Yao had passed away and the dragon kilns had been shut down, it didn't take long before he caught the eye of the blacksmith from Dragon Rider Alley, and he was currently busy building his own forge in the southern part of the town. Liu Xianyang watched as Chen Ping'an blew out the candle before setting it down on the table, then asked, "Have you heard any strange sounds in the morning? Like?" Chen Ping'an sat down on the bench, waiting for Liu Xianyang to finish. Liu Xianyang hesitated momentarily, and in an extremely rare and uncharacteristic display of embarrassment, he blushed slightly as he continued, "Like how cats sound during spring." "Are you saying Song Jixin is imitating a cat, or are you talking about Ji Gui?" Chen Ping'an asked. Liu Xianyang rolled his eyes and didn't waste any more time discussing the subject with someone who was clearly completely oblivious to what he was talking about. He placed his palms down onto the bed plank, then bent his elbows slightly before straightening his arms, supporting his own weight with his hands so that his bottom lifted up from the plank and his feet were lifted up from the ground. He then pursed his lips as he sneered, "What kind of name is Ji Gui supposed to be? Her name is clearly Wang Zhu. That little song brat always liked to show off ever since he was a wee little pipsqueak. He probably just saw the character Ji Gui from somewhere and decided to use it on a whim without even considering whether that name has good implications or not. Wang Zhu had to have accumulated a ton of bad karma in her past life. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been reincarnated as Song Jixin's servant and been forced to lead such a miserable life." Chen Ping'an didn't echo Liu Xianyang's sentiment. Liu Xianyang was still supporting the entirety of his own weight with his hands, and he harumphed coldly as he continued, "Do you really not understand? Why is it that Wang Ju never spoke to you again after you helped her carry her water bucket that one time? It's definitely because that petty little song brat became jealous and threatened Wang Ju with violence if she ever spoke to you again. I bet he told her that not only was he going to break her legs, he was also going to throw her into Clay Vase Alley. Chen Ping'an couldn't bear to listen in silence any longer, and he interjected, "Song Jixin doesn't treat her badly." Liu Xianyang was furious to hear this. "How would you know? You don't even know the difference between good and bad." Chen Ping'an's eyes were bright and clear as he said, "Sometimes, when she's doing things in the yard, Song Jixin would occasionally read that local county chronicles book while sitting on a stool, and she would often look at him and smile." Liu Xianyang was quite taken aback to hear this. All of a sudden, the thin plank bed snapped in half down the middle, unable to support Liu Xianyang's weight any longer, and he sat heavily down onto the ground. Chen Ping'an placed his hands onto his own head, squatting down as he heaved an exasperated sigh. Liu Xianyang scratched his head as he stood up, and he didn't apologize or express any guilt. Instead, he gave Chen Ping'an a playful kick as he grinned and said, "Get over it. It's just a crappy little bed. I'm here today to deliver a massive piece of good news to you, one that's way more valuable than this crappy bed." Chen Ping'an raised his head upon hearing this. A smug look appeared on Liu Xianyang's face as he continued, "While Master Ruan was out of town and passing by the creek to the south, he suddenly told me that he wanted to dig a few wells. He doesn't have enough people for the job and wants some more help, so I mentioned you to him on a whim. I told him that I know a short kid who has some decent strength, and Master Ruan agreed. He wants you to go and see him in the next couple of days." Chen Ping'an immediately stood up, and he was just about to express his gratitude when Liu Xianyang raised a hand to cut him off. "Stop. No need to thank me, just remember what I've done for you." Chen Ping'an could only grimace in response. Liu Xianyang looked around and noticed a fishing rod placed on a slant in the corner, a slingshot on the windowsill, and a wooden bow hanging on the wall. He was about to say something, but refrained from doing so in the end. He took a big stride through the doorway, clearly intentionally avoiding stepping on the ashes of the burned talisman. Chen Ping'an looked on at his departing figure, and all of a sudden, Liu Xianyang turned around to face Chen Ping'an again. He then crouched down into a low stance before shuffling a few steps toward Chen Ping'an, then threw a heavy punch in his direction. After that, he stood up straight again as he withdrew his fist and chortled, "Master Ruan told me in private that I'll only need to practice this fist technique for a year, and I'll be able to kill someone with a single punch." He didn't seem to be satisfied with his performance, and he subsequently made a strange kicking motion as he continued, "As the saying goes, a good kick to the crotch can kill a drunk donkey." Finally, Liu Xianyang pointed at his own chest with his thumb as he declared in a high and mighty manner, "While Master Ruan was teaching me fist techniques, I developed some theories and insights, so I spoke to him about some things, such as my understanding of the jumping burin, which was Old Man Yao's trump card technique in porcelain making. Master Ruan praised me, saying that I'm a generational martial arts talent. As long as you stick with me, you'll be living the good life for sure." Out of the corner of his eye, Liu Xianyang could see that Ji Gui had already entered the neighboring house, and he immediately lost all interest in keeping up his heroic act. After dropping the facade, he casually said to Chen Ping'an, "By the way, as I was passing by the old locust tree earlier, I met an old man who set up a new stall over there. He told me that he's a storyteller and that he has a bunch of interesting stories that he wants to tell us. You can go and take a look there in your free time." Chen Ping'an nodded in response, and Liu Xianyang departed from Clay Vase Alley. There were many stories about the unruly young man going around in the town. However, the story that he personally liked to perpetuate was that his ancestor was a general who led armies in battle, which was why there was a prized suit of armor that had been passed down for generations in his clan. Chen Ping'an had seen this supposed prized suit of armor once, and it was extremely hideous, like a suit of warts, or like the scarred and mottled surface of an old tree. However, Liu Xianyang's contemporaries told a completely different story. They proclaimed that Liu Xianyang's ancestor was a deserter who had fled to the town and became a live-in son-in-law to a family here, and that he only managed to avoid being captured by authorities thanks to a huge stroke of fortune. They were extremely convinced of the authenticity of this story, as if they had personally witnessed how Liu Xianyang's ancestor had fled the battlefield before traveling to the small town. After some contemplation, Chen Ping'an crouched down beside his doorstep and lowered his head to blow away the ashes. Before he knew it, Song Jixin had appeared on the other side of the wall with Ji Gui in accompaniment, and he yelled, "Want to come play with us at the locust tree?" "I'll pass," Chen Ping'an replied as he raised his head. "What a spoilsport," Song Jixin grumbled with a displeased expression. He then put on a smile as he turned to Ji Gui and said, "Let's go, Ji Gui. I'll buy you a whole temple jar of peach blossom powder." "Just a small cricket jar's worth is enough," Ji Gui responded with a shy expression. Song Jixin clasped his hands behind his back, taking large strides forward with his head raised and his chest puffed out as he declared, "Our Song family has been living in luxury and affluence for generations. I would be bringing shame to my clan if I were to be so stingy." Chen Ping'an sat down on his doorstep as he rubbed his own forehead in exasperation. When he wasn't talking nonsense, Song Jixin actually wasn't a bad person to be around. However, at times like this, if Liu Xianyang were here, he would have definitely expressed to Chen Ping'an an urge to smash a brick into the back of Song Jixin's head. Chen Ping'an leaned against his doorframe as he thought about what the next day was going to be like. It was most likely going to be just like this day, and the day after the next day was going to be just like the next day. In his mind, he was going to live out his life in this repetitive cycle until he passed away just like Old Man Yao. Everyone relied on the earth for sustenance for their entire life, but upon their death, they would be devoured by the earth in return. After closing one's eyes for the final time, the next time one reopened their eyes, they could be in the next life already. Chen Ping'an looked down at the straw sandals on his feet, and a smile suddenly appeared on his face. It was definitely a different feeling to step on bluestone slabs rather than soppy mud. After leaving the alley, Liu Xianyang was just passing by the fortune-teller's stall when the young Taoist priest called out to him, "Come, young man, I can see that you have the complexion of a fire fueled by oil. That's definitely not a good omen, but do not fear. I have a way to help you avert disaster." Liu Xianyang was rather surprised to hear this. He knew that this Taoist priest had always been telling people's fortunes based on the sticks that they drew, and setting aside whether his fortune-telling was accurate or not, Liu Xianyang couldn't ever recall an instance where the Taoist priest had actively tried to rope in customers. Almost all of his customers had voluntarily gone to him. Could it be that with the closing of the dragon kilns, the Taoist priest's business was also impacted and he was struggling to get by, thereby leading him to go after all potential customers with discretion? Liu Xianyang chuckled in disdain. "The way you're going to help me avert disaster is by having me give you money, right? Piss off. You're never getting a single copper coin out of my pocket." The young Taoist priest remained calm and collected as he yelled out, "Everyone hopes for fortune and prosperity, but who knows what troubles life has in store? People only turn to the gods when things go wrong, but to have a safe and stable life, one should regularly offer burning incense to the gods." Liu Xianyang suddenly turned around before rushing toward the fortune-telling stall like the wind, putting on a menacing display as he scoffed, "You want me to burn incense? How about I burn down your stall first?" The Taoist priest was clearly very much intimidated by this threat, and he immediately turned and fled, leaving his stall behind. Liu Xianyang stood beside the stall, chortling with mirth at the sight of the Taoist priest's cowardly display. He then spotted the bamboo tube on the table and casually pushed it over. All of the bamboo sticks inside were instantly tipped out, fanning themselves out across the table. Liu Xianyang pointed at the Taoist priest, who had stopped in the distance, and threatened, "From now on, I'm going to beat you up every time I see you." The young Taoist priest could cup his fist and bow as he begged for mercy. Liu Xianyang was finally willing to let him off the hook. Only after Liu Xianyang had gone far away did the Taoist priest dare to return to his seat, and he sighed, "These are difficult times. People are no longer as kind and accepting as they used to be, and it's getting harder and harder to make a living." Right at this moment, his eyes suddenly lit up, and he hurriedly closed his eyes as he recited, One often blames external distractions for spoiling their peace, but the true distraction comes from within. Achievements are nothing more than lily pads on water, going whichever way the wind blows. The pair of youths passing by clearly heard him, but unfortunately they displayed no intention of stopping. The Taoist priest opened his eyes ever so slightly, and seeing that more potential customers were about to pass him by, he hurriedly slammed a palm down onto his table as he raised his voice and continued, "Champion scholars and prime ministers were nothing more than normal people before their rise to glory. With great knowledge comes great renown and confidence." Song Jixin and Ji Gui continued onward without pause. The Taoist priest was greatly disheartened by this, and he murmured to himself, "It's over." All of a sudden, Song Jixin turned around without any warning before tossing the Taoist priest a copper coin from afar with a bright smile. "Thanks for your blessings." The Taoist priest hurriedly caught the coin before spreading his hand open and taking a look, only to discover that it was the smallest money-value copper coin possible, and his mood wasn't lifted at all. The Taoist priest gently placed the copper coin down onto the table, and all of a sudden, an oriole quickly flew down onto the table, gently pecking at the copper coin before picking it up with its beak. It then looked up at the Taoist priest with a pair of bright and intelligent eyes that were no different from a human's. The Taoist priest sighed, "Go, this is not the place for you." The oriole departed in a flash. The Taoist priest swept his gaze over his surroundings, and in the end his eyes settled on the tall archway in the distance. He just so happened to be facing the plaque that read "Unmatched Aura," and he mused, "What a pity." He then added, "If I could take this outside to sell it, surely it would fetch at least 800 to 1,000 taels of silver." Chapter 5. Revelation. After arriving at the locust tree with Ji Gui, Song Jixin discovered that it was extremely packed, with close to 100 people gathered under the tree's shade. He sat down onto the stool that he had brought over from home, and there were still more children dragging their adult family members to get in on the fun. Song Jixin and Ji Gui stood side by side at the edge of the tree's shadow, and he spotted an old man standing at the foot of the tree. The man was holding a large white bowl in one hand, with his other hand clasped behind his back, and he wore a vehement expression as he loudly declared, "Just now I spoke about the general direction of the dragon vein. Now let me tell you about the true dragon. This is a truly amazing story. Around 3,000 years ago, an almighty deity appeared under the heavens. First, he cultivated patiently in a certain blessed paradise, and after attaining the great Tao, he explored the world on his own with his sword by his side. With his 3-foot metal in his hand, his prowess was unmatched. For some reason, he had a vendetta against dragons, and he spent 3 entire centuries hunting for dragons, only stopping after there was no longer a single true dragon in the world. In the end, he disappeared without a trace. Some speculated that he had gone to an extremely high plane where the great Tao originated to discuss Taoism with the patriarch of Taoism himself. Some said that he had gone to the extremely distant western Pure Land of Sukhavati to discuss scriptures and Buddhism with the Buddha. There are even some who say that he's personally stationed at the gates of the underworld to prevent malicious wraiths and spirits from wreaking havoc upon the human plane. The old man was speaking with such vigor and enthusiasm that spittle was flying everywhere out of his mouth, but all of the town residents around him were looking on with lost and befuddled expressions. "What's a 3-foot metal?" Ji Gui asked with a curious expression. "It's a sword," Song Jixin replied with a smile. "This old man is way too pretentious and full of himself. He can't even speak properly," Ji Gui grumbled. Song Jixin was looking at the old man with schadenfreude in his eyes as he said, "Barely anyone in our town even knows how to read. This storyteller's efforts are completely wasted here." Ji Gui then asked, "What is a blessed paradise? Does there really exist someone in this world that can live for 300 years? Also, isn't the underworld a place that only dead people go to?" Song Jixin was stumped by these questions, but he didn't want to look stupid, so he said in a dismissive voice, "It's all nonsense." He probably read a few obscure, unofficial historical texts and is regurgitating what he read to swindle uneducated hillbillies. Right at this moment, Song Jiksin noticed that the old man took a glance at him. It was unclear whether the glance was intentional or not, and it was only a very fleeting glance before his gaze was directed elsewhere, but Song Jiksin was still sufficiently perceptive to have sensed it. However, he didn't think anything of it, merely chalking it up to a coincidence. Ji Gui raised her head to look up at the old locust tree, and she reflexively narrowed her eyes against the fragmented rays of light filtering through the gaps in the tree's canopy. Song Jiksin turned to look at her, and he was abruptly transfixed. Ji Gui had a side facial profile that was only just beginning to graduate from its baby fat stage. She was far different from the thin and emaciated little maidservant in Song Jiksin's memories. According to the traditions of the town, whenever a woman was married, an individual with a full set of blessings would be invited. The definition of such an individual was one whose parents and children were all still alive, and that person would be invited to shave off the fine hairs on the bride's face, as well as to trim her bangs and temples. The procedure was known as face opening, or brow elevating. Song Jiksin had also read about a tradition that didn't exist in the town from a book. Hence, when Ji Gui was 12 years old, he bought the best newly brewed wine in the town, then brought out the porcelain vase that he had hidden away. The coloration of the vase was extremely beautiful, resembling a greengage, and he poured the wine into the vase before carefully sealing it in clay and burying it underground. Song Jiksin suddenly said, "When it comes to Chen Ping'an, my scholar ancestors would say that he's a piece of rotten wood that can't be carved, or a pile of manure that can't be built up into a wall, but at the very least, he's done one meaningful thing in his life." Ji Gui offered no response as she lowered her head, and it could be seen that her eyelashes were trembling slightly. Song Jiksin continued speaking, almost as if he were talking to himself. "Chen Ping'an is not a bad person. He's just way too dogmatic in his personality. There's no flexibility in the way he does things. That's why after becoming a potter, no matter how hard he worked, it was predestined that he would never be able to create a good product with any flair or spark. That's also why Old Man Yao never took a liking to him. He was a man with a keen eye, and he knew that Chen Ping'an simply wasn't cut out for this. That's what it means for him to be a piece of rotten wood that can't be carved. As for a pile of manure that can't be molded into a wall, what that basically means is that for someone meant to be impoverished like Chen Ping'an, even if you dress him up in the emperor's dragon robes, he'll still just be a good-for-nothing hillbilly." A self-deprecating look appeared on Song Jiksin's face here, and he sighed. "I'm actually even more pitiful than him." Ji Gui didn't know how to console him. Song Jiksin and Ji Gui had always been a popular subject for gossip for the affluent clans on Fortune Deer Street and Peachleaf Alley. And that was primarily thanks to Master Song, Song Jiksin's illegitimate father. There weren't any important figures in the town, nor were there any exciting events. Hence, the kiln supervision official sent by the imperial court naturally became the most prominent figure in the town, much like the all-powerful judges seen in stage plays. Out of the dozens of kiln supervision officials that had been assigned to the town throughout history, Master Song was the most popular with the people. He wasn't like the high and mighty officials that came before him. He didn't hide away in his official manner to work on personal cultivation, nor did he turn away all visitors and focus solely on reading and self-education. Instead, he always attended to matters related to the creation of imperial ware in person, and he was even more like a commoner than the potters working at the kilns. During the dozen or so years in which he was at the town, his original scholarly appearance had been replaced by a dark tan, and his regular attire was no different from what was worn by the men working in the fields. He never put on a high and mighty front when dealing with others, but unfortunately, the imperial ware fired using the dragon kilns in the town were never quite up to standard, regardless of whether it was in terms of shape and form or their coloration and glaze. In fact, the imperial ware that was produced had regressed compared with before, much to the puzzlement of the old kiln masters. In the end, the imperial court most likely felt like Master Song's efforts were very commendable, even though the outcome wasn't ideal, and he was given a decent evaluation on the documentation from the Ministry of Personnel, summoning him back to the capital. Prior to returning to the capital, Master Song spent all of his money to fund the construction of a covered bridge. After that, it was discovered that a certain child wasn't brought along on the convoy that Master Song had departed in, and the most affluent clans in the town immediately realized what this entailed. It could be said that Master Song had accumulated a great deal of good karma in the town, and in addition to that, Song Jixin was being looked after by Master Song's kiln supervision official successor, so he didn't have to worry about food, clothing, or shelter, and led a carefree life. As for his maidservant, whose name had been changed to Ji Gui, there were many different theories and stories about her origins. The local residents of Clayvay's Alley claimed that she was a little beggar from out of town that had come to this place on a snowy winter's day. She had fallen unconscious in front of the entrance of Song Jixin's courtyard, and if she hadn't been discovered in time, she would have already passed on to the afterlife. The old man taking care of menial chores at the official manor had a different story. He proclaimed with great confidence that she was an orphan that Master Song had purchased quite some time ago, so that his illegitimate son, Song Jixin, would have an intimate companion, and that he had done this to compensate for leaving his son behind. In any case, after the maidservant was named Ji Gui by Song Jixin, the father and son relationship between Song Jixin and Master Song was confirmed beyond a doubt. This was because all of the most affluent individuals in the town knew that the characters Ji Gui were engraved onto Master Song's favorite inkstone. After returning to his senses, a bright smile appeared on Song Jixin's face. For some reason, the thought of that tenacious four-legged snake just crossed my mind. Think about it, Ji Gui. I already threw that thing into Chen Ping'an's yard, yet it still crawled into our home. How terrible of a place must Chen Ping'an's den be if even a little snake didn't want to stay there? Ji Gui considered the question carefully before replying, "Perhaps some things are simply down to fate." Song Jixin gave her a thumbs up as he happily agreed, "That's exactly right. Chen Ping'an is just someone who isn't blessed with any fortune. He should be satisfied with just being alive." Ji Gui didn't say anything. Song Jixin mused to himself, "After we leave the town, Chen Ping'an will look after everything in our house. Do you think he'd steal what was entrusted to him?" "Surely not, young master," Ji Gui replied. "Oh, you know what it means to steal what's entrusted to someone?" Song Jixin asked with a smile. Ji Gui blinked innocently as she replied, "Doesn't it just mean what it says?" Song Jixin smiled as he cast his gaze toward the south, and a hint of longing appeared on his face. "I heard that there are more books in the capital than there are plants in our town." Right at this moment, the storyteller declared, "There are no longer any true dragons left in the world, but dragon-kin such as flood dragons, drakes, and hornless dragons still truly exist among us in this world, and perhaps—" The old man intentionally paused here to try and build some suspense, but the audience remained unmoved, completely oblivious to what he was doing, so he could only continue. "Perhaps they're hidden right among us. The deities of Taoism refer to them as dragons lurking in plain sight." Song Jixin gave a bored yawn. All of a sudden, a vibrant green locust leaf came fluttering down from above, and it just so happened to land on his forehead. Song Jixin grabbed the leaf and twirled its stem in between two of his fingers. Chen Ping'an was considering whether he should go to the eastern town gate to ask for the 5 copper coins that he was owed, and he also saw a locust leaf fluttering down as he approached the old locust tree. He immediately sped up and reached out to try and catch the leaf, but the leaf glanced past his hand, carried away by a gentle breeze. Chen Ping'an was quite agile, and he quickly took a step to the side to try and intercept the leaf, but it continued to evade him as it twirled around in the air. Chen Ping'an refused to give up, making a few more attempts, but was ultimately unable to catch the leaf, much to his dismay. An azure-robed young boy that was flunking his lessons at the private school passed by Chen Ping'an, and unbeknownst to him, a locust leaf had landed on his shoulder. Meanwhile, Chen Ping'an continued on toward the eastern town gate. Even if he couldn't get the money, it was always definitely a good idea to exert some pressure on the gatekeeper. Over at the fortune-telling stall in the distance, the young Taoist priest murmured to himself, "Who says there's a disparity in the cycle of fortune?